Roughly 3,000 additional American troops have landed in the Middle East over the past week and a half, pushing the total US military footprint in the region past 60,000 personnel, according to the figures shared with the Congress. That buildup includes a full aircraft carrier strike group led by the USS Gerald R. B-52 bombers repositioned into the striking range and Patriot missile batteries set up to intercept whatever Iran throws next. Here is the part that should stop you. This surge happened in the same stretch of the day that the president publicly announced he was calling off what he described as the biggest planned attack since World War II, supposedly to give a fresh diplomatic deal room to breathe. One of those two signals is telling the truth about what's coming next, and it almost certainly isn't the one written in the social media post. The hardware, the Ford Strike Group, joined by Abraham Lincoln and George H.W. Bush Strike Group, already in the region, close to three separate carrier strike groups in theater and within the rapid strike distance of Iran simultaneously, a concentration CENTCOM hasn't maintained at this density at any earlier point in the war first 5 months. B-52 aircraft typically held in reserve for large-scale multiple target striking that flattens an aircraft network in one coordinated wave have been repositioned within the range of Iranian targets. Patriot batteries which shoot down incoming ballistic missiles have been added around US installation and allied bases across the Gulf, signaling that defensive planners expect Iran to hit back hard the moment any new offensive launches. The cancelled attack, reporting from the White House this weekend, revealed Trump had a fully prepared plan for what he called the biggest attack since World War II, originally set to launch Sunday. He didn't cancel it because Iran backed down or a verified agreement was signed. He scrapped it after Gulf countries, Gulf allies like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE pushed back, with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman personally raising concern in a phone call. Trump says he asked MBS point blank whether he would rather see the attack happen and agreed to hold off, subject to being able to rapidly make a deal, not because the deal exists, but because one might. That's a lot of uncertainty underpinning the pause of what was supposedly the war's largest planned strike. It was worth asking whether the plan was genuinely ready to execute or whether some version of it was always designed to be announced and dramatically pulled back for leverage. Either way, the goals seems the same: keep Iran, Gulf capitals, and American public believing catastrophic escalation in one phone call away. Pressure that makes a rush deal more likely to get signed quickly. The proposed deal, publicly the framework, would require the immediate, complete, and total opening of Strait of Hormuz and the end of Iran's nuclear threat, in exchange of US lifting its naval blockade and letting Iran resume normal oil export. A regional official involved in mediation says it would also require Iran-backed militia in Iraq to stop attacking Gulf countries and Jordan. Skepticism is warranted. Trump has announced halts to this exact conflict several times since it begins in February, and every time the fighting has resumed, an April ceasefire collapsed within a week. A more detailed 60 days memorandum of understanding signed in June fell apart in about 3 weeks. Strikes on commercial shipping near Omani water in early July mark a third attempt at de escalation that also failed. The current terms are similarly vague. No one has specified the mechanism that would actually guarantee an open Strait of Hormuz or what ending Iran nuclear threat even means. Formal inspection, unilateral US assessment, loosely defined terms are exactly what let each side claim the other violated the April and June agreement. A weekend social media announcement with no signature, timeline, or enforcement mechanism is in the same category of things as a ratified treaty. Iran's own reaction supports that skepticism. Its defense ministry said the country was neither surprised or passive and that Iranian forces remains fully alert regardless of what Washington says. That same weekend, the State Department issued fresh security alert for 10 countries: Bahrain, Israel, Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, Lebanon, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, warning of fighting cancellation and airspaces closure. Government don't issue synchronized regional travel warning across 10 countries when they are celebrating peace. They do it when bracing for things to get worse. The phone confiscation signal. US troops stationed in Jordan have reportedly been told their personal phone will be confiscated in the coming days, with the policy under consideration for wider regional expansion. This follows a letter from CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brett Cooper warning that Iran benefits from watching American strike unfold in real time through news coverage and troops' own footage. Communication blackouts are one of the oldest pre-operational signals in modern warfare. You don't strip phones from thousands of deployed troops as a symbolic gesture. You do it before something you don't want broadcast live. It matters especially here because Iran has reportedly used open source material, troop movements, equipments in background shots, geotagged posts to build its own target pictures. The Trump Netanyahu meeting. Days before the weekend announcement, Trump and Netanyahu reviewed three strategic paths: a genuine diplomatic agreement, intensified economic pressure with a tighter naval blockade, or renewed expanded military action. A senior Israeli official present said Netanyahu deliberately expressed no preferences, telling Trump the final decision was his alone. The postures of two governments keeping every option open, not two allies who have settled on peace. The war hasn't paused. In the same window as the announced halt, Iran's army claimed a retaliatory drone strike on Ahmad al-Jabbar air base in Kuwait. The 27th stage of an operation it calls Lightning, targeting hangars, satellite comms, and equipment warehouses, framed as payback for a US strike that killed three civilians, including a 2 years old on Kishland. Jordan's air defense intercepted missile salvos on back-to-back night. A drone strike hits an Egyptian Mediterranean port LNG terminal, the first time this has happened in the war. A separate strike on a building linked to the Chinese company in Kuwait killed a worker, prompting Beijing's first direct public statement on the war, which asked Kuwait to protect Chinese nationals rather than criticizing Iran. Our researchers tracking the pattern describes two parallel strategies: Washington's vertical escalation and Tehran's horizontal escalation, letting both sides keep fighting without risking direct confrontation, a pattern that could continue indefinitely. The domestic political clock. The Senate voted 50-49 to block a war power resolution that would have forced the administration to get congressional authorities before continuing hostilities, the second such resolution defeated in 2 weeks. That leaves the administration a free hand to escalate for now, but a 60 days clock triggered by the president's own war power notification in early July ticks towards a hard deadline in September, after which continued unauthorized action gets legally shaken. That gives Washington real incentive on either resolve this or execute a decisive strike before the clock runs out. A House vote in late July already passed a non-binding resolution 214208 calling for an end to unauthorized hostilities, a sign of growing unease even among sympathetic lawmakers. The human and economic cost. 18 American service members have been killed since the war began in late February, with more than 600 wounded per Pentagon figures compiled through congressional reporting, not counting four additional mid-July deaths classified separately, including a first lieutenant not yet 26 and a separate barely out of her teens killed together at a base in Jordan. On the Iranian side, independent monitors place cumulative death about 3,600, while US and Israel intelligence estimated run considerably higher, potentially 6,000 plus one tens of thousands of injuries are factored in. Economically, oil has swung from below $74 barrel during the calm stretch to above $100 during sharp escalation, trending upward as the war grinding into the sixth month. War risk insurance for vessels transiting the Strait of Hormuz has climbed to 7 to 10% of a ship's hull value, up from roughly 1 to 3% before the war, a cost that eventually passes through fuel prices, shipping rates, and consumer goods. Where things actually stand, Iran conventional military has been substantially degraded across nearly 6 months of near nightly strike. Its air defenses network assesses at close of 90% degraded in earlier phase, dozens of large naval bases eliminated, and coastal missile drone infrastructure reportedly destroyed and rebuilt, but degraded capability hasn't ended Iran's willingness to keep fighting. It keeps finding cheaper, asymmetric ways of sustain to the war. Drone strike claim retaliation, proxy militia activities in Iraq that offers plausible deniability. Iran is also managing a domestic crisis. Demonstrations spread across multiple provinces through a late July. Retirees, factory workers, and housing applicants protesting, inflation and government mismanagement layered on top of electricity shortage affecting most provinces and reservoir levels near historic lows in the capital region. The pressure cuts both ways. It could push the regime toward a deal it can spin as a win at home, or just as easily toward a dramatic external confrontation if leadership decided that sway regime survival better than a deal that looks like capitulation. The two sides also define winning differently. Washington increasingly wants a verifiable, durable opening of Strait of Hormuz and a credible check of Iran's nuclear program. Measurable outcomes. Iran may consider simply surviving as a functioning government while infliction visible cost on the US and its partner enough to win on and its own terms. Two governments chasing fundamentally different definitions of victory, rarely producing a clean, lasting peace. They produce exactly the same kind of repeatedly collapsing ceasefire cycle in the war has already gone through twice. The bottom line, the buildup doesn't prove an attack is guaranteed in the next few days, and it's possible the diplomatic track produces something more durable than the last two collapse agreements. But it proves the Pentagon and White House aren't betting the outcome on diplomacy alone. You don't fly in a new carrier strike group, repositioning strategies, bomber, and stand up extra missile defense batteries as a symbolic gesture while genuinely expecting a deal to hold. You do it to keep every option alive, ready to pivot toward the biggest attack since World War II within days if this diplomatic window closes the way the last two did. Moving a career strike group costs real money, fuel, and time. Nobody commit resources at that scale without seriously preparing to use them. Signals worth watching in the coming days. Whether the pause attack is formally cancelled or simply shelled, postponed is the very different from cancelled. Whether Iran takes any verifiable step towards reopening the Strait of Hormuz from Western line shipping, whether the phone confiscation policy expands beyond Jordan to other US positioning in the region, the September war power deadline, which will force a more concrete decision that any current deadline outline which will force a more concrete decision that any current deals outline. Whether Iran's state media and military spokespeople shift tone toward outright rejection or toward concrete compliance step likely before Washington's next move become public, given Tehran's shortened distance before leadership decision and state broadcast. There is a version of this where the diplomatic path finally holds, where the Gulf mediator lock in verified compliance before either side can backside as they did in April and July, and exhaustion after 5 months of fighting overweigh the pull toward more escalation. Given how many prior attempts have failed, that would be the surprise outcome rather than the expected one. The more likely path based on troops movement rather than announcement is that this pause holds for days or a couple of weeks before something. A strike that goes too far, a violation blamed on the other side, a proxy attack that crosses a line, breaks it apart, and the carrier strike groups currently sitting in the Gulf stop being a deterrent and becomes the opening move of the operation it was built for. The middle scenario is also plausible, a grinding rhythm of occasional pauses and smaller retaliatory exchanges that never reach the scale of the pause biggest attack but never fully stop either, with the carriers and the bomber functioning as a standing expensive deterrent rather than a trigger for months longer. That kind of settlement carries its own cost, continued strain and oil market, continued shipping risk, and continued exposure of the 10 of thousands of American troops now stationed across the region, showing no real sign of claiming down. Whichever path plays out, the lesson holds to know what government actually believe is coming next. Watch where it moves its aircraft carriers and bombers, not what is typed into the public statement. Announcements are free and instant. Repositioning a carrier strike group costs enormous money, weeks of logistic, and real operational risk. That gap between the language of diplomacy and the language of military logistics is where the truth about the war's next chapter is currently sitting. And right now, that gap has never been wider.